Darryl Andrews, Coach D. Really, really, really love talking to Coach D, to Darryl. He's a leadership coach, but he's so much more than that. He's also an author. We didn't get into that, but he's very much my goodness, such motivation, such energy. We talk about self care. It's kind of overlooked term. Wellness in the States here is a big issue. Where are we with self care? Are we taking care of ourselves mentally, physically, spiritually, etc.? He really has a big focus on self care and helping people. The other big issue we talk about is he is a leadership coach, but he feels it's a dramatic change in leadership, especially in coaching, since the pandemic. It was such a change in attitude and perspective. Pandemic had shifted so much, and he really focuses now on leadership post-pandemic style. Very interesting, his angle and his attitude towards that. We talk about one of my favorite leaders, of course, and his is Coach Wooden, John Wooden, of course, and he has something called customized motivation. I wonder if you know what that means. Great conversation with Darryl, Coach D. Andrews. Really, really enjoyed it. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Thanks so much for your time. I'm very excited. Darryl Andrews, of course, coach. Thanks again for your time.
Yes,
Tell
sir.
me what self-care is.
Well, listen, man, the way we describe it, all right, first of all, we describe it from a psychological perspective because a lot of people think of self care. And the first thing that comes to their mind is smoothies and yoga and all that type of stuff, downward dog and all that kind of stuff that you see out here. But what we talk about, it's a mindset, man. It's a paradigm. It's a way of thinking that really is designed to lead to wellness. So our signature statement is self-care is a precursor to wellness. And we're living in a world today with so much trauma, man, depression. There was just a report that came out today by the Society for Human Resource Management that the number one mental health issue in the workplace is anxiety. You know, and so what we're seeing is like a mass proliferation of mental challenges that people are facing post-pandemic that I believe that self-care can in some way curtail. So we got to get folks to stop saying self-care is selfish and start saying it's selfish not to do self-care. We need to make it a priority. We need to make it a priority. Yep.
And does it cover physical, mental, spiritual, neighbors? I mean, what does it cover,
It covers all
coach?
of it. It hits all of it, man, because we need it all. We need the spiritual, we need the emotional, we need the mental, we need the physical, the relationships. When we look at breaking self-care down into categories, some of the critical categories are rest, you know what I mean, diet, exercise, community. All those play a significant role in the overall equation. But what we try to do with our message and our thing is called the self-care movement, and we all do empowering self-care, is we don't try to limit it to one specific area. We say to people, whatever works for you, that's fine, but you need to do it because every week you need to do something to be able to make yourself a priority, or else you can find yourself spiraling out of control with stress and depression and all those other things, and it's just like a snowball effect. So there's a multiple categories to it, but that's for us. That's not the most important part. The most important part is people make it a priority and do something, because
Mm.
wellness is a big issue in our country right now. It's a major issue, major health issue, physically, mentally, spiritually, across the board.
And when you work with somebody that it's obvious that they need help in one of these areas, be it physical, be it mental, etc., do
Yep.
you do you guide them in a particular direction? Do you get a coach for them, and do
Right.
you help them in other ways?
Well, we have coaches, so we have people that do coach, but I'm going to be very careful and Joey when I share this, because some people are dealing with things that need a little bit more. You understand what I
Mm,
mean? Like some
mm,
people need mental health counseling. You know what I mean? Some people, need, a deeper level of therapy. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, I don't want people to think that a coach can overcome a mental illness. You know what I'm saying?
right,
Like that's not
right.
what a coach can do. A person may need some time with therapy. So, but what we do is we're that bridge. You know what I mean? We're that bridge with people and organizations where we say, okay, your people know that wellness is a priority. They're not motivated to do it. We come in and we inspire them and motivate them to take these categories and aspects and do something with it. So
Mm,
I'm very careful, because I don't, this is a real touchy area, man, and
no.
we don't want to make claims that we, because I'm not a licensed mental health counselor. That's not what I do, But I do have people on my team that have ability, they have those type of things if needed. But we don't even with people on my team, I really don't necessarily want to focus on that part, because I think that's more for the pros. But we
Mm.
do help people get up in the morning, get out there, do something, take some walks, shift their diets. We motivate them, we inspire them to make it, to take ownership. And as we go on in this presentation, I can tell you how we do that in our process.
And what is the difference, in your view, between a coach and a therapist? Because I think we're kind of dancing that line a bit.
Yeah, a coach is a person that may be, like for instance, you got the coaching federation. You could be, licensed to be a executive coach, or you can be licensed to be a leadership coach and things like that. A therapist is someone that has gone to school. They have
Mm,
a master's degree, they have a doctoral degree in the deeper level mental issues that people are dealing with. So they have research backing it up. They've gone through, intensive amount of training,
mm,
because extensive, I should say. And I want people to know that's who you need to deal with if you're dealing with deeper level stuff, because there's a lot of people out here saying they can handle that kind of stuff and they can't. If
mm,
they don't have the credentials, don't go with them. But
mm,
if you want somebody to motivate you towards making better choices, if you want somebody to, think tank you towards making adjustments, because that's what we do. We go into companies and organizations. We're sitting down with these companies and organizations. We're looking at their wellness initiative and say, okay, you got 20 things here. People aren't even taking advantage of them. Let's see how we can inspire your people to take advantage of them. That's coaching.
mm,
But if that person on the job is dealing with depression, that's a therapist.
mm,
If that person on the job is dealing with suicidal thoughts, that's a therapist.
mm.
That's not what we do. We don't do that, and I would never claim to do something like that.
I once heard that therapists kind of go back and coaches go forward.
Yeah,
I know it's kind of
yeah.
rudimentary, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to gloss over self care because it's such an important, like you say, wellness.
Mm-hmm.
We see so much depression. I heard a statistic from you. I think you said like 20% of the millennials
Yes.
are depressed, and
Mm.
just self care because so many times we're taking care of other people. We're not looking at ourselves, or we're just kind of,
Mm-hmm.
I'm young, I can get over it, or I could just make up for it. It's not healthy at all.
It's not healthy. Let me say this to you. And I really want to be very careful what I'm about to say next, because this is a real touchy area in our society. But we are, you know, we are we are tech heavy right now as a
Mm,
nation and as a
mm,
people. And so people like me, at this season of my life, I can go on social media and I post quite a bit. I do things like that because I'm a consultant, I'm a speaker, I'm a coach. So I'm putting content out there. But I'm very careful not to get consumed with it, because what you're seeing today is a lot of people who are consumed, and especially if they're younger, many times they're comparing themselves, so they see, I mean, I'm old enough to remember, the players that played in my generation. I didn't know what kind of car they drove or where they lived. You know what I mean?
mm,
I wasn't living in their home, their $1 billion home with their spouses. Man, it just, if we saw it in a, maybe we would see it in a magazine or something like that. But these kids every day, these young people every day are living in these situations where it's easy to say I'm insignificant. It's easy to say who am I when you're looking at LeBron James living in a $20 billion home. I mean, it's
Right.
just kind of is what it is. So we got to be very careful to
Hmm.
monitor our technology consumption, and then also to realize that we are who we are. We're gifted to be who we're gifted to be, and we don't have to compare ourselves to anybody, because a lot of the research is saying that's where a lot of people are getting this depression. They're comparing themselves, and
Mm.
it doesn't even have to be a celebrity. It could be a peer that lives in the same neighborhood
Yeah.
that seems to be doing better. And so we didn't have exposure to a lot of that stuff, but today they do, and that's why that millennial depression rate is so high,
Mm.
because they're living in a highly tech-driven world where they're seeing stuff that I didn't see when I was their age. I just didn't. I wasn't even exposed to it. So
Yeah, nor was I, and who knows how would we reacted to it? It's
yeah,
we don't know. Excuse
yeah,
me. The
mm,
state of Florida just passed legislation where
hmm,
youth 14 and under cannot have a social media account.
yep, and I'm very familiar with that because I live in
Big
Florida.
step. Yeah,
I
me
live in
too.
Florida. I'm in Florida. I'm outside of Orlando, so I'm familiar with that. But I'll tell you, Joey, it's going to be very hard for them to enforce that. Number
Yeah.
one, and then secondly, this generation is so entrenched in technology. They're gonna if they try to pull that away from a lot of these young people, they're going to see even more mental health issues,
Yeah.
because now it's become kind of woven into the fabric of our society. So it's a weird situation. We're in a delicate balancing act. I understand how they may say, okay, that person's too young, but I do know what they're probably thinking. The number of young people going into therapy is through the roof now. You know
Mm.
what I mean? You got 11, 12, 13 year olds that are just dealing with all kinds of mental anguish. And so, that's probably was the premise, but I just don't see how they're going to legislate that. That's going to be very difficult.
It is. I think it's a good step, but let's see what happens.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
You grew up there in Syracuse. I see you wearing your sweatshirt there
Yeah, this is my
representing.
hometown. I'm
Yeah.
representing my hometown, man. I
Yeah,
was born and
sure.
raised there. And hey, man, speaking of self care, that was self care on steroids. It was many, many years ago. Man, the community loved you. The neighbors looked
Mm.
out for you.
Mm.
You know what I mean? If you walked down the
Very
street and had a
different.
look on your face, you had five people saying, "What's wrong with you?" And I just think that sometimes part of it we need to try to go back to. So we can never go backwards, but literally, relationship wise, care like that, man, because it kept me sound and whole as a young person, because I had a lot of therapists.
Mm.
Everybody in the neighborhood was a therapist, man,
Mm.
and they kind of kept us together. And I don't know. I don't think these young people today get exposed to as many people as we had back in our generation. Yeah.
Very, very different. You talk about your mother, how she said,
Hmm.
you were very rambunctious and you talked
Yeah.
back a little bit. And instead of pushing you down and holding you back, she said, you're going to
Yeah.
eventually use that to help people.
You're gonna use that mouth to make a difference, man.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something. God bless her soul, man. She was, what they talk about being a prophet. She was a prophet. She
Mm.
she knew that her words had power. And I would like to digress for 2 seconds and say to people out there, be careful of your words. What you share with other people today has more meaning than what it had several years ago. People can't take it as much as they used to. The bandwidth is not there. So you may be saying something in jest that can crush a person, because to them it's not a joke. It's very serious. And so I'm saying that's my mom's words shaped me into the man I am today, because she could have easily said, "Boy, shut your mouth, you talk too much."
Mm.
But she chose to say, "You're going to use that mouth to make a difference." And now, 2,500 stages and thousands of people later, here we are.
Mm. So important to have that kind of
Hmm.
in our youth, to have those kind of role models to kind of
Yeah.
shape us.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's so, and I'll say this to youth and adults. I mean,
Mm.
no matter how much you age, you need people in your corner. There's a lot of adults that's dealing with it now. That's why the workplace, we place a lot of emphasis on the workplace, because what we try to tell employers is people spend the majority of their time at work. You think about it, the average person goes to work at 9, they're home at 5, and they're with their kids for 3 hours. They go to sleep, get up, they go to school, and they go back to work.
Mm.
So how much time do you really have with your kids?
Mm.
You're only talking about maybe an hour or two before they go to bed, and then you wake up and guess what? You're at work, they're at school. So we really not need to understand, man. You gotta look at this thing from a different perspective. The workplace plays a significant role on the mindset of people that they have to take home. And so we got to understand there's systems that need to be put in place there to even how we lead people from a post pandemic standpoint to help them be able to mentally remain sound by being in a culture that's supportive. So the workplace plays a big role in this as well. And we spend a lot of time over there trying to help companies build these cultures, these healthy cultures.
Hmm. Why has leadership changed post pandemic?
Yeah, it's all interconnected. The pandemic did a number on all of us. We know that.
Hmm.
I myself, I've had COVID twice. I'm trying my hardest not to get it again.
Wow.
I've lost a lot of friends to it, very dear friends. We went through 9 months of pure hell, man. It was
Oh,
crazy. Don't touch this, don't touch that.
yeah.
Spray your bags down. Don't sneeze, don't cough, don't do anything, man. To let's go back to work. How are you going to take people from that and just go back to being normal? That doesn't happen.
Mm.
So that pre-pandemic leader had a different situation because we weren't dealing with this stuff. We were just, if you didn't like your boss, you just didn't like your boss. They were this and that. That same boss today, a person do what's called quiet quitting
Hmm.
because they don't have the bandwidth to deal with that person's attacks or that person's style because they've been through 4 years of wondering, am I going to even make it out of this thing, and all of that. So the pre-pandemic leader had privileges that the post-pandemic leader does not. And so if I'm going to lead people today, I better understand it comes from more of a what we call internal motivation than external. And emotional intelligence plays a huge role in the leader today because we got to know how to connect with people differently than we did prior to the pandemic, or else we will lose them.
Hmm.
We will lose them. And the people are seeing it now in droves. People are quitting. They say, I would rather downgrade my lifestyle than work in this place because I can't deal with the leaders that's leading me. So there's a lot of learning that needs. There's a big learning curve here, man. Joe, it's a big learning curve to get people on the right track.
And is part of it, Daryl, just listening more and trying to appreciate more, or is it trying to, because I
Mm.
I work with a lot of tech firms, and
Yeah,
the big recall is happening where they're demanding, everybody to come back 3 days a week,
yeah,
and
yep,
you're seeing dissatisfaction with the employees. They're very used to working from home. They're very used
yep.
to, being able to get their own coffee in their kitchen. Some like it, some don't, but you're starting to see that decrease. So how do you combat that? How do you help these people with that?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'll say this, and I'll be brutally honest. A lot of people were more productive at home.
Hmm.
When you look at some of these companies, they're trying to create something because they want it, but in reality, if it's like companies like Salesforce went fully virtual,
Yeah.
there's some companies that said no. We are shifting with the times. So what I try to get companies and organizations to understand is pull your emotions out of the equation, pull your pre-pandemic mindset out of the equation, and look at where the world is today. You're trying to create something that existed 6 years ago.
Hmm.
If your people were productive at home and it was hybrid, let them do that. There's nothing wrong with that because they have become accustomed to that lifestyle, but they're
Interesting.
still getting the job done. They're still getting the job done. So now what you're going to create is sort of a mass pandemic. People are just going to get frustrated
Yeah.
at mass. And now instead of having these productive employees, you're going to have a bunch of frustrated employees. I was going to say mass pandemonium, but yeah,
Yeah.
you're going to. So I'm not telling companies what to do. What I'm trying to do, tell companies is to understand the times we live in today. And if you're trying to create a post-pandemic workplace, a pre-pandemic workplace post, you got problems.
Hmm.
You got problems because people today are comfortable. Look at us. Everything is interviews now.
Yeah.
Virtual, Zoom, this tool that you're using. I was here in this conference. I did a speech live and I did 3 virtual programs
Wow.
here in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, that's the world I live in. That's the world
Sure
we live
is.
in now. I can literally do a speech and come down and train. I would train a bunch of people in Texas. It's just, to me, use it, take advantage of it. It's a beautiful thing. Don't fight it, but you need leaders again who operate from a post-pandemic. perspective, and we can help with that because that's a big part of what we do.
Darrell, what's the difference between a leader and a manager?
That's a good question, man. Yeah. A manager has a task or a responsibility that's given to him by a company. You know what I mean? You're going to oversee this department. These are the people that you're working with. And, the task of this department is XYZ, marketing, whatever. A leader is a person that is not just overseeing a department, but through their example, showing people how to effectively go down a pathway. You know what I mean? How to um, remain under control, how to handle tough situations. They are an example to the people that they're managing, because the manager can be a leader or overseeing. And so what you find with leaders is leaders are driven by vision,
Hmm.
and they're also driven by being that person that helps folks to understand this is the way we go about doing it. So that's why people typically look up to leaders.
Hmm.
They want to be like a leader. They don't want to be like a manager. They don't want to be like a manager. But they want to be like a leader because why they admire that leader. You see, I'll say a real quick story. I remember one time one of my mentors was a guy named Nathan Hill, and Nathan was the president and CEO of Discover Card. Okay. And I'm going to give you a leadership story real fast. So he would do mentoring with me. I would go to his offices, and because Delaware is a big banking state. So all the CEOs, a lot of CEOs are right there. I lived in Delaware. And so I would go to this big, massive office and we would sit down and have mentoring sessions. So we had a 30-minute mentoring session. And I was cognizant of his time.
Hmm.
And so we're sitting there and he's sharing ideas with me. When I learned when you were great leaders like that, you shut your mouth and say nothing. You
Right.
just listen. You listen. And so we're coming up on 30 minutes, and then it's 35 minutes. And now I'm getting nervous because I'm thinking, this man's running a multi-billion-dollar company. It's 35 minutes over. His secretary buzzes him and says, okay, we got people waiting. She told him, I'll be back with you in just a moment. I'll get there in a moment. He continues to talk. We 40 minutes in now. We 45 minutes. Then she buzzes him again and said, okay, listen, we got a lot of people waiting for you. We got to get you moving here. And he said, okay, I'm on my way. He speaks. Now my heart is throbbing because I'm like, this man is 50 minutes in from a 30-minute conversation.
Wow.
Then he said to me, he said, Darrell, he said, well, I guess I got to go to work. And then we got up, and we're good friends, man. So he's like a dad figure, he gave me a hug. He said, I'm proud of you. And I said, before I left, I said, Nathan, please give me the leadership lesson in what I just experienced. He said, what do you mean? What did you just do with me? I said, because you got all those people out there waiting for you, but you took 50 minutes with me on a 30-minute meeting. And this is what he said. He said, Darrell, that's my everyday. Every day I'm interacting with people in this manner. I don't get a chance to do that with you every day. And he said, I've learned a very valuable lesson, and that is whoever I'm interacting with in the moment is the most important person in the world.
Hmm.
And right now, that's you. Great leadership, man.
Yeah.
All these years later, that's still sticking in my mind. That's a leader. A manager would have said, well, we got to go. Get out of here, man. I got all these people waiting for me. A leader said, no, you're important. I'm going to take the time to pour into you. And that's why I think I'm here being interviewed by today, because I was groomed by people like that.
Are leaders born that way?
I
Or
don't
can
think
they
so.
be
I think there's tendencies, but I think people can grow into leadership.
Hmm.
Like a lot of the customers we do with the post-pandemic leadership coaching, we tell them, hey, listen, become a student of leadership. Read the books, study the great leaders. And I think some folks may have a little bit more of a propensity to be that way because they're wired. But I think over time, being mentored, being groomed, being, coached by coaches, having leaders within the company, take the time to kind of mentor you, you can become that leader. I think you can. And I've seen a lot of people that's been able to do that, very, very successfully. That did maybe not even born with all those great communication skills and all of that, but still a great leader.
Hmm.
Still a great leader. Yep.
And how does one know when they're a good leader?
When people are willing to follow.
Hmm.
You just like that old saying, if you're leading and you look back and nobody's following, you're really not leading.
Hmm. Leader of
Let
one.
me give you another story. I'm a storyteller, so I just tell stories.
Please.
And I think that's a good way for people to learn. People, they remember 80% of the stories and 20% of the rest of it.
Right.
So 2 years ago, I was at a funeral. And the funeral was of a guy named Jim Walton. Jim, I used to work for Abbott Laboratories in their medical diagnostics division, and I also worked in the pharmaceutical division. And Jim was a national leader at Abbott during those days. Jim was a $1,000 suit, gator shoe wearing national leader. He just was the sharpest dresser. He loved a shot of cognac. He was that kind of guy. But he was leading marketing worldwide, and he was the best. He was hard, he was tough, he was rough, and loving at the same time. You know what I mean? He would push you towards those sales goals, and then on Friday, want to take you out to dinner and have shots of cognac with him. I didn't drink cognac, so I said, no,
Mm.
man, that's okay. I'm not going to do that. Jim passed away. And, he had retired and he was done. So he had his career and he did well. At that funeral were African Americans and Hispanics and, women and all kinds of people that are now heading up companies and corporations and business units and all over the world showed up at that funeral to pay honor to that man.
Hmm.
Because everyone said, I am where I am today because of his leadership. That's a leader. That's a leader. That man's long gone, and we're still living in the shadow of his efforts years after he's out of here. That's how you know you're a great leader. If you can reproduce yourself through other people, through the way you do things, people can learn and grow and become effective in their own space, then you're leading. And I'll tell you something, that was one of the greatest. I sat there in awe of all the people that sat there to pay an honor to that man. I didn't even know he knew all these people.
Mm.
I had no idea. Now we're all good friends because we have one leader that helped all of us.
Mm.
It's amazing. That's a sign, man. That is truly a sign of great leadership.
It's a great story, Darrell. When people come to you and say they want to be a better leader, how do you work with them?
You know what? I'll say this, Joey, and it's so important. It's almost impossible to get people to see and know things if you don't build a relationship with them.
Mm.
As much as I know about leadership, and trust me, I know a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I've studied it, I've sat up under it. If you just first came to me for the first time, I am not going to unload all this knowledge on you. I want to get to know you. I want to get to know your life. I want to get to know about your kids. I want to get to know about your family, your dreams, your aspiration, your goals, some of the great things you've done. Because relationships are the currency of the 21st century. And people have a tendency to go in and just want to superimpose their thoughts on people. Okay? No. You got to get to know where that person is. So if you came to me, we're going to spend the first 2 or 3 times together just getting to know each other. Because I want you to feel comfortable with me, and I want to feel comfortable with you.
Right.
And then from there, we can start having those in-depth conversations about what's your long-term aspirations. What type of culture do you want to create? What kind of leadership style are you going to embrace? Let me give you our definition. Joey, I don't give everybody this definition. I'm going to give it to you, though.
Please.
Our new definition of leadership. We redefine leadership in our organization, and we're training our folks on it throughout the country. Leadership prior to the pandemic was the ability to guide, govern, and influence. If you talk to anybody in leadership, that's what it was. You know what I mean? From the great leaders of great corporations to the motivational speakers like Zig Ziglar and all that, they all had this. And I knew Zig personally, and he was a great guy. Great loss several years ago with him. But our new definition is this. And if anybody's out there listening, please write this down. If you want to recruit and retain talent, if you want to be relevant post-pandemic, our new definition of leadership is the ability to listen, understand, and engage.
Hmm.
That's our definition now. It's not about guide, governing, and influencing no more. See, that was the season with Jim to do that. Now you're gonna guide, govern, and influence by hearing what people have to say, making them a priority, not being so busy that you come in my office, okay, what do you got, and you multitasking. You slow down, listen to them, talk to them. We have a group we coached out in the West Coast, 25 leaders of a big medical institute organization, and this is what we said to them. I want you to find 3 or 4 people on your staff. This was kind of again during the pandemic. and do virtual cups of coffee with them. They're like, what do you mean? I said, just talk to them, man. Don't talk about the business. Don't talk about anything. Just virtual cups of coffee. And I said, and bring one of them back with you in 2 weeks for our next coaching session.
Hmm.
Wasn't a dry eye in that room, man. Those employees were overwhelmed. They couldn't believe it that their leader took the time to get them to know on a personal level. They thanked me to no end. I said, don't thank me at all. It was your leader that did it. I'm just here to facilitate a process. And that's all I ever do when we do these programs. I'm not the star of the show. The people that's doing that, they're the stars. But I'm telling you, people were in tears. This one lady said this is the first time in 20 years. She said, I go to work, I go home. I go to work, I go home. She said, I know people. But to take the time to ask me questions about myself, this was the first time in 20 years.
Wow.
And that's not unusual in the workplace because people do their jobs, they go home. Do their jobs, go home. They don't have that interaction time. And so what we're saying to leaders nowadays, you have got to slow down and get to know your people. That's how you're going to retain them. Because a person will forsake a 20, 30, 40, $50,000 increase for the right culture. They will.
They certainly will.
They will. Yep.
Yeah, I remember hearing you saying that people will take less salary for better culture. That's absolutely.
Yes. Everybody wants to make money, don't get me wrong. But in this tech age, man, people making lots of money.
Yeah.
Where I live in Florida, man, you got young folks up there making 400 or 500, $500,000, man, driving Lamborghinis. Okay, these are 20 somethings. So money is abounding, especially if you're in tech. But stressed to no end, depressed to no end, meds. I know I'm counseling a lot. I do a lot of coaching. I call it free coaching because they live in the community I live in. Someone start charging y'all for some of this stuff, and so they hop in their Lamborghini, but they can't even hardly sleep at night,
Right.
because they're depressed. So times have changed, man, and we got to understand that's what the people today are looking for. And leaders who understand self-care, leaders who understand how people flow, are going to be the ones that's going to build great organizations moving forward. The great organizations of 20 and 30 years from now are going to be the ones that got it right now.
Right.
The other ones will be obsolete. They won't even exist anymore.
You've got great social media, like your posts, you put up your videos. One of your favorite leaders and mine, John Wooden, you mentioned in one of your posts, and he has a term called customized motivation.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's one of my favorite terms.
Yeah.
I share it all the time. I share it with all my leaders, and I say, you know what, embrace it. Because this man was doing this in the 60s.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know what it is, Coach Wooden was being interviewed and about his ability. He had won 7 NCAA championships in a row, 10 overall. Now, the 10 has been matched, but the 7 in a row have not.
Right.
And so he was asked the question, how do you get so many players to produce at high levels? And his response was simply customized motivation. And the person was like, what do you mean by that? He said, well, I don't coach all my players the same way. Some players need a hug. Some players need a push. Some players need data to support what we're talking about. Coach, prove to me that this works. If you find out what that button is for that player, you're going to always get the best out of them. In the workplace, you got some people that are demonstratives. You got some people that are, the love language type thing. Some folks want to. It's all those things play a role with people. Think they want to make the workplace totally mutually exclusive from life. It's not. It's still a human. It's still a human being. You know what I mean? And so I'm not saying that every leader has to go out and study 5 love languages. I'm not saying that. But leaders need to know their people. And I think Wooden gave us the greatest illustration of it. Sit back, look at this person. And then he trained his assistant coaches on it. So now they were reproducing it in their position, their various positions. See, leadership, Joey, is an art form. And if you are a leader and you're not studying leadership, you'll never be a great leader. You'll never be a great leader. Because great leaders study leadership. They read books like Good to Great. They go back and pull old books like How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Right.
They're always educating themselves. They pop on podcasts. They pop on like yours. They pop on, they go to conferences. They take the time to develop themselves. If you haven't done anything in the last 2 or 3 years to develop yourself, you're not going to be effective as a leader. So as a leader, you got to become hungry to grow. Like Les Brown always used to say, you got to be hungry.
Hmm.
I don't even remember Les Brown enough, but yeah, that's what he always says. Hmm.
John Warden, it was just I remember I think it was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar said like the first practice he made everybody tie their sneakers properly.
Yep.
They all sat back. It's just no, everybody take off your shoes. You can't play. I mean, it's just his methodology was so
Mm.
interesting and the numbers prove it. You mentioned leadership being an art. How much of leadership is art versus science?
Yeah. Let me tell you something. It's definitely something. You got science in there as well, but I say it's art because art is. Let's put it this way. Let's say you have a blank canvas and you have paintbrush and all that kind of stuff. All right. The reason why I say that is because in your mind you can see what that picture is going to look like,
Mm,
but now you got to draw it. Now you got to put the right colors in there. So a leader starts with a blank canvas, and they're looking at what that picture is going to look like when they do X, Y, Z. That's what I mean. It's an art form. And so, okay, we're gonna have this color, we're gonna do that, we're gonna do this and that, and boom, at the end, you got this beautiful, beautiful picture. It kind of reminds me of you ever see? I love this, man. This kind of stuff. I get geeked out by some of the craziness, but I love leadership. I love when I ride down the road, man. Joy, and I see a sign coming soon, and you look in there, and there's this big, beautiful facility. Then you look over there, and there's a big, big pile of dirt. You're like, that big pile of dirt is going to become that.
mm,
That's leadership.
hmm.
You're looking at it like, man, this is what it looks like now. But at some point, it's going to look like that. That's what great leaders do. This may be where we are now, but one day we're going to look like that.
Huh.
You see? So they don't look at where they are as, you know, necessary. They look at it as part of the process. Yeah, we're a big heap of dirt sitting over here now. But guess what? One day we're going to be over here, man, and it's going to be this big, beautiful that everybody's going to see. I like what's his name, Facebook's CEO. With something he said,
Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg. He said this, and he was being interviewed on a Reese Hoskins show, Masters of Scale, and which I love. It's all about growing businesses, so it's a pretty neat podcast. That's the kind of stuff you do when you make $19 billion from a sale and you got nothing else better to do. And so he was interviewing Zuckerberg, and he said, you know, what's your key to success? And he said something that was really crazy, man. He said, build it, wreck it, fix it.
Hmm.
He said, build it, wreck it, fix it, man. He said, explain what that is. He said, well, you know what? We put products out there. They're not perfect. We know it. But we said we believe in these products. See, leaders need to believe in what they have. The organizations to believe. And he said, and so we know mistakes are going to be made. People are going to tell us we should do this, we should do that. Then we take it back, wreck it, redo it, and then we put out this final product that is the ideal product that people need throughout the world. See, that's how leaders are always looking at these different ways of building stuff and building people. And the greatest leaders are building things and people at the same time,
Hmm.
simultaneous. I coached this one organization. They went from 0 to 5 billion, but their people were here and they had the 5 billion, but the people were down here.
Hmm.
And I said, you got the money, but you don't have the people. And we coached them and trained them and all of that. And we did some core values reassessments, and we evaluated because they had older core values. And then guess what? When the people aligned with the vision, then it took off. So we got to understand the people part of any organization is the most important, because without the people, you ain't get the money. It's just not going to happen. Or if you're in a nonprofit, you're not going to achieve your goals. So great leaders are always trying to develop great people that in their own right one day become great leaders. And guess what, man? It's just reproduce. It's rinse and repeat. Now this person retires, here comes the next one. And that's how you keep growing. Yeah.
You mentioned core values. You've got a great post where you talk about that. I mean, can a leader lead without core values set?
You want my opinion on
Of
it?
course.
I don't think so, because you don't have an anchor. You don't have a true north, and you're not telling the people where we're going. Core values are the glue that keep things together within the
Mm.
organization, because we can always filter what we do through our values. So that's going to tell me how to treat that customer. It's going to tell me how to treat that coworker. It's going to tell me what my work ethic should be every day. But lacking core values, you know what happens? Everyone creates their own. And what you want people is on the same page, not 25 different belief systems and this is how we should do it here. But without core values, people don't know, so they make their own stuff up. You know, I remember when I spoke at Walmart Corporation, they flew me down. They messed me up, man. They flew me down on a private jet. They should have never done that,
Wow.
because once you get a private jet experience, it's like you don't ever want to fly
Yeah.
commercial again.
Yeah.
But they flew me down to speak to all 8,000 of their senior leaders worldwide. And it was quite an experience. But I remember talking to their then CEO, Mike Duke, and I asked him the question. I said, man, this was after the presentation, got a great standing ovation. Lee Scott was there. He was the former CEO, man. I said, I just saw you on the cover of Fortune magazine like a couple of weeks ago. And he said, yeah. He said, that's just an old piece of paper. I said, okay. But I was talking to Mr. Duke, and I said, Mr. Duke, what do you think your greatest challenge is with all these tens of thousands of employees that you have? And he went down a list of different things. We were in this office chatting. And then he said, I said, I think your greatest challenge, sir, is this. They had me fly down there. Actually, they had me fly down to speak on one of their core values, striving for excellence. So that's what I was there for. I said, your greatest challenge is you have hundreds and thousands of people going to multiple locations with different value systems on how they were raised.
Mm.
Some people are going to naturally be respectful. Some people are going to naturally be this and that because that was their upbringing. But now what you have to do is take all these people, and you got your biggest challenge is get them on the same page around these 6 core values. That's a lot of work with that many people. And he said, he's funny. He said, that's why we flew you down here to inspire us to do
Mm.
it. I said, you didn't pay me enough. But put another zero at the end of that check, you know. But anyway, no, man, as you can see, I love what I do. I've had some great experiences. I've been around some powerful people, man. But you know what? From the big corporation down to the little mom and pop operation, it's still leadership. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Does a great leader have to find his or her replacement?
If they're smart, yeah. It's called succession. If you're not, I think every company, I think most companies today are pretty good at that. They start their succession plans, early. And if they don't have a succession plan, they need to get one. Because how do you maintain the consistency and continuity of your organization if someone is not being groomed to step in and take over what you built? You know, I got to give him credit. Not that I'm the biggest fan of everything he does, but Bill Gates probably 15 years ago said he has 100-year vision for Microsoft, and that vision was so pronounced that he was able to walk away from it 16, 17 years ago and turn it over to somebody.
Mm.
Now he's just spending the money, giving to this and giving to that. The point I'm making is it was that 100-year vision that allowed him to do that, because he knew who he needed to have in that spot. Different, the different people they've had, Balmer and all those people over the years, because the system was already in place.
Hmm.
All those people had to do is come in and run with the system. And so succession should also be like systematized. This is how we do things, that leaders being groomed to operate in that mode, so that guess what? If somebody like a Steve Jobs dies, the next person steps up and boom, it's still running. Apple's still a big, massive, impactful corporation.
Big corporation.
Yep.
So, Darrell, I started my business back in the 90s,
Mm.
and I was working way too hard, and I was not doing enough self care. And
Yeah.
I was working 14, 15-hour days, stopped exercising. I was, eating pizza, drinking soda late at night, got myself up to 340 pounds.
My goodness.
The
Mm.
doctor said to me, if you don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. My daughter had just been born. So it
Mm.
was kind of my come to Jesus moment. I, pounded my steering wheel as I drove away. And so I proceeded to lose about 130 pounds over the next 7 months. And people always ask me how, like there's some trick, like there's some quick answer. And my quick answer is discipline. That's
Yes, sir.
how. I just got
Yes, sir.
discipline. Now, I heard you say that this is the year of discipline. How does discipline play a role in your life, Darrell Andrews?
First of all, I'm loving your story. Thanks for sharing that, because that is truly, because let me say this. I'll share my story, share in a moment, but I want people to catch what you just said.
Hmm.
Part of self-care we talk about is the why.
Yeah.
See, you did self-care because you had a bigger reason. And when we do our training, we talk about that. Hey, it's not just about you.
Hmm.
It's about all those people that you love and care about, that you can be healthy and all that for them. And so, thank you for sharing that, man. That's that you it was perfect. You know, perfectly aligns with what we talk about when it comes to self-care. But as far as discipline, again, I'm a storyteller. So I was one time listening to Venus Williams, Serena Williams' sister, the tennis player, and they were asking her the question. Of course, there's always, when you succeed, everybody wants to know how you succeed.
Hmm.
And so she said, well, I live in a world where the majority of my friends are successful. She said, I have friends that are actors and actresses and that operate at a very high level in life. And she said, there comes a time, however, where all of us have things we have to do. Like an actor may have to take on a skit and they're gone for the next 9, 10 months. Or I'm preparing for Wimbledon. You won't see me for a year or so. And so she said, we're okay with that because we understand in our careers we have to prioritize. So when it comes time for us to step up to the plate and do things, we have to. And so she said, the thing that's made us all successful is we all have a high level of discipline.
Hmm.
And this is what she said. This blew me away, man. I almost jumped. Little things get me excited when I hear these people say things. And this is what she said, man. And this is, anybody listening to the show, please write this down. Discipline is the key to freedom.
Hmm.
That's what she said. And I said, what a profound statement. She said, the things you want to do in your life, the life you want to live, is a byproduct of discipline.
Hmm.
And if you don't do those things, you can't fault anyone else. Now, some of us have situations, of course, that are different than others, physically, mentally, whatever it may be, that we don't have the same, it's not on equal footing. So, we get that. But I will say this, overwhelmingly, when you look at it from a true leadership perspective, it's just about discipline, man. It's about regiments, putting systems in place. I like this book, Atomic Habits, where it talks about you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. You put those systems in place and you operate within those systems. That's what most successful organizations, that's what Wooden did. So discipline, without it, these ideas just become frustrating more than
Hmm.
anything,
Hmm.
because we never get there because we didn't take the time to be disciplined. So no, man, I love, that's my word of the year. I wake up to it every day,
Hmm.
brush my teeth, I look at myself, and you're gonna be disciplined today. I'm constantly keeping that one in front of me, because without it, man, none of this stuff happens for us. So thanks for bringing that one up, because that's an important one.
What motivates you, Darrell Andrews?
Well, what motivates me, one is my faith. I gotta admit that, because that's a huge part of who I am. My faith in God, and my love for all that represents from a biblical standpoint. But also, obviously being a family man. I got a wife, and we've been married almost 30 years. I don't know how she put up with me that long. And we have 4 beautiful children. It ranges ages 13 to 26. I have a 20-year-old, I have a 22-year-old, 26 and 13. They're my pride and joy. They wear me out sometime, but I joke with them. I say, y'all, but they're my pride and joys. My kids, the kids are just the most amazing, amazing people, and then my wife as well. But you know, it professionally, what motivates me is I love to see people take what we train on, what we coach on, and what we teach on, and then you see end results.
Hmm.
Man, I'll tell you something. To see someone, you go in and you do a team building training, and you see them a year later, they're the most proficient team. You're like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. To take a leader that said, "Oh man, the people wearing me out and they're this and that, and I don't know," and then you see them a year later and the people loving them. Yeah.
Mm.
Other words, what motivates me is to teach and train and coach in such a way that people can take this information and go back and change their situations.
Hmm.
Because that's what this is all about. You're not paying me to come in and change my situation. They're paying me to come in and change theirs. And I like how this one guy said it. When you teach and train is when your story becomes mine
Mm.
and I own it. So those are three things that really motivate me every day. And I got a good regimen, man. I work out hard. Go to the
That's
gym
all.
every day
That's
and
all.
I get up early and I take care of myself. So physically and mentally, I'm pretty strong.
So, given that, Daryl, how do you measure success?
You measure success. How do you measure success? Well, I think, to be honest with you, Joe, when you look at it realistically, measuring success is really in the eyes of the beholder. You know what I mean? Like, what is success? You know, I give here I go with another story, I don't know if this story is true, but it resonates with what we're talking about now. There's a story about this man that owned an island. It was just he and his family. They were out there and they would, grow their vegetables and live off the land and all that kind of stuff. And a wealthy investor found out about this island and said, "Let me fly over there and see if I can convince this person to sell this island to me because I want to put hotels up, I want to put casinos up." And so he flies out there and he sits down with this guy, and they're pretty, they don't even have the full gear clothes on. They're kind of cash the way they live, live. And he said, "Hey man, listen, I want to give you $1 billion. I want to buy this island, and you and your family will have everything you want. You'll be able to live the life you want to live, and you'll be able to have fun and enjoy life." And so the man looks at him. He says, "So, sir, you're going to give me $1 billion, and we're going to live the life we want to live. We're going to enjoy doing things together. We're going to be able to accomplish all our goals and dreams because you're going to give us this $1 billion for this island." And the man said, "Absolutely." He looked at him and said, "Sir, I already have that. Hop back on your helicopter, go home."
Mm.
To that man, he was already successful. To that billionaire, he was successful because he had $1 billion. You see the difference? So we in our country define success too much by our possessions. That man defines success by, "I'm already happy." Me and my family, we love each other. We grow our food. We live off the land. We don't need all that. So I'm not knocking either way. It's okay to make money. It's okay to get good living. But you could be successful and you don't even have all of that because you define success by other intangible things that we don't even think about. And I think success can go, to me, it's good both ways.
So, how do you measure specifically then?
How do I specifically measure success?
Yeah.
For me, man, like I said, I've kind of alluded to it already. Being a family man,
Hmm.
for my kids to say, they love me, and for my wife to say, "Honey, you're a good man. You take care of the family." That's greater than stepping off a stage with 10,000 people saying that's the greatest speech I've ever seen.
Hmm.
You know, to have them feel that way. My daughter on Father's Day, on my birthday, did a post on Facebook that had me in tears about what kind of dad I am. And I've read that thing 1,000 times, man, because I know she thinks that way about me, but to hear her put it in writing and blast it out to people all over, what kind of father I have,
Hmm.
that was priceless. You
Hmm.
can't put a price on that stuff, you know. And so my family is one of the big things. And then I also measure success by the way I live my life. If I talk about having good character, I need to live by that. If I talk about respecting other people, I need to show that. If I talk about, I expect people to do certain things, but I don't expect it of myself, is that right? You know what I mean? And so I measure my life by the values in which I decide to live by and how closely I adhere to those values. And if I do, that's success. Notice I have not said anything about finances right now
Right.
because money is a medium of exchange. It's not a segue to happiness.
Mm.
It's just a medium of exchange. And people have connected too much of their happiness to them dollar signs. Now, I have no problem. Again, I'm making sure I'm clear. Make as much money as you possibly can. God bless you. But there's other aspects of life that really, I think, define success much more than being worth $100 million. And I know people worth $100 million that are miserable. So
Mm.
I know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Well, I'm a very big fan of yours, Darrell Andrews,
Mm,
Coach D. I really appreciate. I love your posts. You're very inspiring. Your energy is so contagious, and
mm.
I really, really enjoy. Anybody's listening, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, man. For first of all, I just want to say thank you for that. I think I'm living in my purpose, and I want to let my purpose make a difference in the lives of people. So thank you for that. You can go to my website, coachdspeaks.com, coachdspeaks.com. You can go to our self-care website, selfcareempowered.com, selfcareempowered.com. I want to go back to the Coach D Speaks website because this is important. There is a young man out here that's calling himself Coach D Speaks, but he's on the political side.
Ah,
That's not me. I want people to know that because he's really intense. He's a Democrat and he's really intense with Republicans, and people have mistaken him for me. That's not who I am.
interesting.
He's about 25 years younger than me. I don't even know who he is. So I just want to, every time I get interviewed, I tell people that. So if you go to my website, I've been Coach D Speaks for 20 something years. This kid just showed up on the scene.
I see.
So that's not who I am. I'm about people. I care about people and things like that. But most importantly, all right, connect with me on LinkedIn like we are, Joy, because LinkedIn is where I do my work. I'm posting videos. I put information up. I answer questions. I interview people. Go, connect with me on LinkedIn. And secondly, if you're an organization, an individual that wants to enhance your leadership skills, improve in self-care, that's our sweet spot, man. We can get in there, we can work with you, put these systems in place to help your organizations or even you as an individual. Because post-pandemic, it's all about those areas now. We can no longer look and say, we can ignore that. No, we have got to make them a priority. So we would love to be of help if we can as a coach, trainer, or consultant.
We'll make sure to put all that up on the show notes and LinkedIn. Of course, your Coach D Speaks as well. We'll
Yep.
make sure we put all those links here. You do a great post on Instagram and Twitter,
Mhm.
and really
Mm.
enjoy your content. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time, and I look forward to one day having a cup of coffee with you.
Hey, my man, you know that's going to happen. And let's stay in touch too. I enjoy your show and enjoy you as a person, man. So let's not just make this a one-time deal. Let's make sure we
Very
stay in touch.
appreciate
Mm.
it so much. You be well. Thanks again.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations.